Hi everyone, welcome back. I have a very cool card today, and I started off by colouring in and all the images from the Den Sweet Den Lawn Fawn stamp set using Prismacolor pencils with some. I use low odor mineral spirits, but Gamsol will work if you can get your hands on that. And basically it sort of dissolves, for want of a better word, the waxes in the pencils and makes them blend really nicely onto the card. So it's really, really nice stuff to use. And then I have a variety of stamp sets that I'm using here. I've got Perfectly Wicked for some of the spoons, and I've got Bicycle for You, obviously Den Sweet Den. And what we're going to make is a Christmas themed Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I just thought this would be kind of cute. So from Lawn Fawn's Build a House Christmas add-on, I've got the lights, which I thought could come in handy for something you'll see in a bit. And I'm using Lawn Fawn's Sparkle Holiday cardstock, which I've had for ages, and I just haven't dragged it out to use it. So I thought this was a good time. I also used the Lawn Fawn stitched ovals, and I think I used the third one from the largest, and I just cut that. I've pre-cut a lot of the stuff just to save some time. And I also used it to not only cut a area out of the back panel, but I also then cut it out some watercolor cardstock. So you'll see what we'll do that in a minute, with that in a minute at least. I've then used two of the stitched frames to create a frame. The stackables to create the frame, and then the Bayou backdrop is also part of the scene. So once I had all the pieces die cut, that's usually the bit that takes the longest for me. I'm going to use some prize ribbon and to get this piece of watercolor cardstock that is the same size oval that was cut out of the sort of a beige color cardstock I just had on hand for the background. And I'm starting with the prize ribbon and just ink blending over the top of the whole thing. I just want a sort of, I'm imagining a bit of a nighttime scene when I created the scene. So they're all indoors, nice and warm and toasty, and then you've got this little window to the outside world. So that's the idea anyway. And I've just got that ink blended, and then I'm trying to get some of the excess ink off my little silicone mat here. This is the waffle flower one that I cut up, so if you want to look at that video, that'd be great. But I basically, I cut it up, so it's much easier for me to use now. So over the top, sort of from the top down of this piece, or what I know will be the top of it, I'm using some chipped sapphire distress oxides. Oxides I love because they have this chalky finish, and they are super reactive. I mean, distress ink is reactive with water anyway, and a lot of dye inks are, but this one in particular is very, very reactive. I love how this and it kind of has that oxidized look, which is the whole point of it. It's very cool. So I spritz with some water with a distress sprayer and then just blotted off the excess. But because those splotches were very white, I didn't want that, so I just went over without re-inking the blender, the blend brush. I just went over it again with the same ink just to mute them down a bit, and then I used my heat tool to dry it off a little. It's going to sit for a minute or two just to dry off anyway, but oxides and distress ink reacts with any moisture, so it's always going to react, but I needed it as dry as possible. Then what I did was I used the tree stump from Forest Feast, I think it's called. It's also a Lawn Fawn stamp set, which I would have shown you at the beginning. And I stamped with, I believe it was a Stampin' Up! Ink. I want to say soft suede because it's one of my favorite colors. But I stamped it in a brown, and then I'm using some gathered twigs over the top, and just from each side, from the left and the right hand side, I'm just sort of dragging more of that color in, so it gives a bit of light, like a lighter center to the stump. And I just thought that added a bit of shading and made it look quite nice. So, and then again, more water just to clean up my little matte thing. Then I'm bringing my some archival jet black ink in. I'm using archival for the sentiment because I've got oxide, and oxide is notorious, like I say, any distress ink is notorious for reacting with a water, with moisture, basically. So I decided on an archival because I knew it's kind of like an oil-based ink, and it will sit on top of the paper, so it won't like the ink won't react to the moisture from the ink that I've used on the sentiment, if that made any sense. So here I've got my card base, which is a brown cardstock. I think this might even be from one of the Simon's card kits. Might be the October one. And I'm going to start by sticking the back panel, so the beige colour piece, to my card base. Normally I would sort of do this bit afterwards, just in case I mess up, but I obviously was feeling brave on this particular day. So I've got some, this is Lawn Fawn double-sided tape. This is a 1/4 inch, and it's nice and strong. So I quite like using it for most of my paper crafting. If I'm making 3D boxes or frames or things like that, then I do use the red liner tape, which you guys know I love because, you know, it's so static. When you take the liner off, it clings to everything. But it is a really strong tape, so that's nice if you're doing 3D projects. But for paper crafting and card making, generally, most other double-sideds would be okay. But I find the Lawn Fawn one is particularly nice because it is quite a strong tape. So getting the background piece stuck to my card base, and I believe I need to cut off a little bit. Yeah, it's slightly longer. These were like chunks, not chunks, that's the wrong word. These were pieces of cardstock that I cut up just as sort of panels I could use for anything, for die cutting or for bases for cards, that kind of thing. So for the sentiment and what is the sky, I'm just going to add some extra tape there because one, it's like a watercolor cardstock, and we've obviously played around with ink and water and everything else, so it will help to hold it in place. And also I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to pop up at any point because it's being sort of inlaid into another section. So that's the sentiment in there. Now, in hindsight, I should have put that sentiment lower in that oval because it does get a little hidden, but it's okay. You get the idea. So to start with, I wasn't sure whether I was going to pop up any of these layers. In the end, I just kept everything flat, but with the frame, I'm going to stick the Bayou backdrop to the frame section. I don't know if I said how I made the frame. I basically took 2 of these stackable dies and sort of temporarily, with some masking tape, laid them inside each other. So one die, like a large die, and then a slightly smaller one of the stackables inside each other, and then tacked them in place with some low-tack tape, and then ran that over my cardstock through my machine, and that gives you that frame. So if you don't have frame dies and you have stackable dies, so for like layering on cards, you can create your own frame, and you can get a lot more variety in the thickness of the frame by just using different size layers, if you like, of those dies, if that made any sense. But you can create it. So I basically created my own frame. That's what I'm trying to say. And the Bayou backdrop, I had my piece of cardstock the green cardstock was actually smaller than the die itself, but it didn't matter because I knew it was going behind it. So you can see it doesn't totally fit, but it's fine because it's I just, as long as the Bayou, like the little vines, if you like, are coming down from the top down in the right place behind my frame, I was happy with that. So that's all I'm doing, is sticking it to itself, but you can see it is smaller than the frame, but that doesn't matter. So I probably didn't even need to cut the whole thing out. I could have just cut the top section out. So that's the base of like what the background's going to look like. At this point I did realize that I needed some ground or something for the bottom of the card, so that the characters were sitting on something. They're not just kind of floating. So although they will still look like they're sitting down and all that, there was just no ground. So just to draw your eye in, you'll see in a bit, I will show you how I actually like ground them, just with some pattern paper. So you can use plain colour cardstock for this, and you can emboss it if you wanted to, just for some texture. But I'll just use some really old Lawn Fawn. I think it's the Knit Picky paper pad. I've had that thing for years, and so I just decided to use some of that. I used the smallest pattern I could find and in a colour that worked, so you'll see that in a second. But at the moment I'm just trying to figure out where I want to place everything, because there's a lot of pieces. I wanted to keep this to an A2 size card, but there's so many pieces, you could actually create a bigger card. So you could have a 5x7, and that would give you more space to play with. And also, if you used a slimline, you could have more of an outdoor, like the outdoor part of the scene if you wanted to. I just wanted to keep this as simple as possible. So just, wanted to, but I also wanted to use all these different things that I'd stamped and coloured and cut out. So I'd taken all that time to do that. I kind of wanted to use them. The other thing that I didn't say is that all the pieces were cut out using my Scan and Cut. Those of you who've been here a while, you know I love that thing. So it's a bit of an investment, yes, very much so, but it is well worth it when you compare all, if you're buying all the dies for every stamp set that you own, if you're a big stamper like I am. So for me this works out well, and also if you do not have, some stamps still don't come with coordinating dies, so that saves you having to try and cut them out anyway. But I know a lot of you like the beveled edge that you get from a die when it cuts round an image, and I do too, but this Scan and Cut for me saves me a lot of money in the long run. So for the lights, which I'll show you later on what we're going to do, is I just literally put them together as you would for the build a house. But what I should have done is on the green piece where those little, like, I'm going to say pips that come down, I should have, in hindsight, put some glue on that as well. You'll see in a second. They just ping off because I didn't glue them down. So note to self. And there's that red Knit Picky paper that I used just to put a strip across the bottom to create like a carpet. That's what I'm going to call it. If you had some wood grain papers, you could use that as kind of like a wooden floor, and it just gives that illusion that there's floor and then there's a wall at the back and there's a window kind of thing. So that's sort of the idea. Obviously they're in a bit of a, I'm imagining they were in a cave, so with lamps and stuff, but it's good. And so because I had an idea of where all my pieces were going to go, I started to layer up my little mushroom tables and some of the books. And on the other one I have the lamp that I've put there because, they need light to be able to see what they're doing. And then just using an acrylic block while the wet adhesive has a chance to dry, I just shove that on top there. You could stick a couple of them on there, but this is the one with the sentiment, so I just used that. And then for the mum and dad, I have the same bear. I just used them, just stamped and cut it twice. But just to try and make them a little different, so that one looks more like a dad bear. I don't know if that's even right, but anyway, I just used a variation on the browns that I used for them, So he's a little darker, she's got more of a red coat, and then the baby's kind of in the middle. But it's obviously the baby, so it's, you know that that's a different one. What I could have also done is found in my stash of stamps, because I have one or two of them, is maybe like a little bow that could have been used as a bow tie for him or a bow for her in her hair. But I was trying to keep them as quote unquote natural as possible, because they would be in the wild, although they wouldn't be having a tea party with a little girl, I'm sure. But, this is what goes on in my head. So I do add some dimension. I think I said I kept I kept the frame flat, I believe. I think. No, I didn't, actually. I lie. I obviously changed my mind halfway, because I was going to keep everything flat, but I just thought that actually having very thin foam tape, which is about 1 mil thick, just helps to bring a bit of dimension to the front. So that is the only height that there is on the whole thing. I don't double layer anything. I just tried to keep the things that were in the background flat, and the things that were in the foreground, I just made sure that they had some foam on them, so that they raises it and makes it look like there's a bit of depth between the front and the back. If hopefully that makes sense. And then when it comes to putting the frame on the whole scene, you'll see I'll add little pieces as I go to make sure that it lines up and stays level on the whole card. So I've got my main table, which is the tree trunk, and then obviously the dad bear is sitting behind it, and then I've got Mama Bear who's going to sit in the front here, and I've got some foam tape on her. On the part that isn't on the tree stump, the part that overlaps the tree stump itself is just wet adhesive, because that's lying flat against that tree stump, and the tree stump's already raised up. But the section underneath her that isn't, it would be like free floating, that's the bit that I added another piece of foam to. So it's just a case of putting the pieces together and then working out where you need your foam, so that when you actually add the foam to it, you don't land up with that bobbliness, if you know what I mean, so it won't sit squonk. It's a technical term, of course, but I hope that makes some sense. So it's just so that it lays nicely and level. So there's a little bit of fiddling when it comes to putting all these pieces together, but I think it just makes it work really well once it's there. So sometimes I also, like with this little girl with Goldilocks, I stuck her to the chair first, and then worked out where I would need the foam, because some of her, like the Mama Bear, some of her is overlapping the tree stump, which is already raised up on the foam, and then the rest of her would need some foam to make her level with the tree stump. So the front ones, I'm just going to stick the baby bear straight on there, because he's already quote unquote raised up because he's on top of the tree stump, so he doesn't need extra foam, although you could, because he would just raise him and push him more forward, so he would look more 3D. And then I was just, before I stuck him down, I decided where I wanted to put the bowls of porridge, or oats for my American friends. I don't think Americans know what porridge is, do they? I'm not sure. Let me know. But we call it porridge here. And yeah, so I just wanted to stick that on, get the bowls of porridge on there first. And also being careful not to put too much adhesive on, because some of the porridge will actually overlap. It overlaps the tree trunk, so I only put wet adhesive on the part that was sticking to the tree stump. And then the same with the little chair. I've just added the adhesive where I needed it for the, to go on the tree stump, and then put the little bear on top of it, because that was kind of an easy thing to do. So now that I have that, I think there were a few more things I needed to do. if I'm right. I've still got the spoons to sort out. Yes, behind some of the porridge bowls, because they were overhanging, I decided to add a little bit of the foam to the parts that were overhanging the tree stump. So again, a bit like with the Mama Bear and with Goldilocks, there's part of them that's flat, again stuck flat to the tree stump area, the table area, and then there's another part that's overhanging. So I added some foam, and then I will get the little Den Sweet Den picture frame. I'll get that stuck on the wall because everybody needs a picture in their little home. And then the spoons, I actually struggled. I had an idea beforehand, and then I actually struggled when I came to it to actually know where to put these things. So they'll end up in a bit of a random place, and I wasn't sure if I liked them, but they're there now. So I have one that I stuck to the table, just so it looks like it's on the table. And then I have another one which I think I put in, like Mama is holding the spoon. And then the last one, I got the baby bear to hold it. So it wasn't totally where I was thinking they were going to go, but I think it worked out okay. So we're going to go with it. So now to get the frame onto the... Oh, before we do that, we're going to do the lights. So I'm cutting off the string, if you like, that is along the top, so that I've got the red sparkle and the little green part of the light itself. And this is where you can see on the table there, this is where I hadn't glued it properly, basically, to the string. So I had to finagle, which is why I did it off camera, and get all those little lights fitted to the bayou. I thought them hanging from the bayou itself would look really cute. Like they've got all their lights hanging from this sort of, I don't know what they called, like vines and things that are in their cave. So that was the idea. And then to level up the the frame so that everything's on the same level, I've got foam along the top half of the frame itself, and then on the bottom there you would have seen that I put little sections of foam, so next to the bear, next to Goldilocks, so that when we stick the frame down, it's all going to line up and be nice and level, and no wonky bits. Nobody likes a wonky bits. So that was the idea behind that, and it just it frames it, but it also keeps the whole scene, even though you've got a little bit of dimension, it just still keeps it fairly flat. So for postage, it's still quite a nice depth. It's not too high, and I think it's quite a cute little card scene for Christmas and something a bit different. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this sort of Goldilocks inspired Christmas card. It kind of came together fairly well, I think. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a very merry season, whatever you're doing. Winter season, it's definitely getting colder here. And thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sticking through all of these videos that I make for you. And until next time, I will see you then. Bye for now.